Hey guys, it's me again. I'm back with a continuation of our video. We were left off, we were playing a Ghoul Arcane blade, and we just made it through a couple of the starting areas. We're going to try and clear all of the starting areas as quickly as possible here. We already did those in the other video series, and they're not too different for a Arcane blade character. I mean, with a Ghoul, we're not going to have the regen option, but the shield actually makes most of the harder parts of these areas easier. The problem with survivability comes later on when the Ghoul's shield no longer has the lifespan to last for very long in combat. A nice thing about playing a Ghoul is that it doesn't hurt quite so bad to get mobbed since you have the AoE retch effect. Later on, when you have it completely maxed out, you might be able to take some pretty obscene amounts of damage without actually dying as long as the retch is down. The trick is to have some means to get away once the retch is expired. So you don't have movement infusions. It's generally recommended to have a teleport rune pretty much ready to go all the time. He shouldn't prove difficult at all. Ghouls have built-in stun resistance, so enemies like Norgos that have a stun effect are pretty much cake, because it's unlikely he'll ever be able to stun us, and if he does, it'll be only briefly. Oh, I accidentally de-equipped my helmet. That was not what I intended to do. Isn't quite better than what we already have equipped. If we were playing a willpower-based cast, that would actually be pretty nice. The slippery armor used to be one of the better early Arcane Blade armors back when it procced on spells, but now it's only on mind effects. Let's see. The starting zones pretty much never change. That's why they add this skip to the end thing. Because most characters will do all of the starting zones, it can get kind of tedious to do the entire zone over and over again. Especially when you get to the point where I'm at right now, where there's not a whole lot of different upgrades you could get, but you're not quite comfortable enough yet to skip to the end. Or to skip past the zones. This is a nice item we might use much later on, but right now I'd prefer to have the 30% healing mod on this. I tend to pack rat with artifacts for a bit. Most of the characters I play are melee and tend to pump strength, so I always have plenty of encumbrance. And then I find myself at the end of the game with like 300 items sitting in my inventory. tier 1 artifacts that I was saving for Spellblaze gauntlets that I never found, or a quest I never did, or some theoretical situation where even if that theoretical situation came up, I'd never actually remember to use it. Sometimes I'll full clear Raloran camp on a character when you really need gear for. I almost always do it on Marauder characters because there's certain artifacts that can pop in this range that'll make a Marauder's life really easy. Because this is one of the 2 dungeons that can have good vaults out of the newbie areas. This one in Core Pool, sometimes it's worth full clearing. If you have a character who you think's beefy enough to do it, make the first 3 starting zones include Raloran camp and Core Pool. That way you don't have to get stuck unnecessarily going through a additional dungeon. In this character's case, though, it's not necessary. Alright, do the boss now. Now, the telekinetic core is not the best artifact for an arcane blade because we're not really stacking mind power or anything. But the bonus to physical damage is okay, and the bonus to willpower gives us a little extra mana, and mana is an early problem for us. It kind of goes away over time. I keep having abilities spawn on my bottom bar here, and I keep having to scroll to get to them. I don't know why I did that. There. I'm mana regen talent. Putting all these points into Arcane Feed, and I didn't even have it on. I thought I turned that chat off. In fact, I know I did. I think it's because I scrolled up while I was on it. It's just the old chat log. I haven't actually closed my clients that I did the last video. Oh, and the boss is right next to the door. How terribly polite. And I used the wrong ability. Thankfully, this boss is stationary. A lot of the other bosses will try and get out of your goop when you drop it on the floor, as will most enemies. But in the case of crystals, because they can't move, they will just sort of sit there and die. Something so funny about a cursed midge swarm chasing me down with a battle axe. Like, do the flies all have small axes, or is the big swarm of flies just carrying one big axe? Alright, we've hit level 12, and things start to open up for us a bit here. We get Arcane Destruction, and now we can actually get some use out of putting points into Cunning, because as our crit goes up, basically anytime we land a crit in melee, a ball of fire, lightning, or arcane damage will explode, doing AoE damage. It also increases our physical power based off of our magic and cunning stats, which is why we're going to raise magic and cunning pretty much from here on out. Putting additional points into this will happen later on, but for right now, 1 is just fine because we don't have much of a scaling bonus from it yet. And it just is an excuse to switch from strength completely at this point now that we can actually put a point into it. See, we've only got base 25. And ideally, we won't have to raise strength again until pretty late in the game. Core pool should be a little bit easier for this character than it is for most, because ghouls come with baked-in stun resistance. One of the advantages is that you only have to account for 50% stun immunity, and on a class that doesn't get a bonus to their basic immunities like the Arcane Blade, that's really useful. Something to note about Wretch is that it heals undead enemies. So when you're around undead, you only want to use it if you know you can out-damage the healing. Like in my case, I definitely can. But in some of the enemy areas later on, like in Dreadfell, it can actually be a big liability to drop it, and you have to be very careful. Alright, we're done with that. Now we're going to do the Assassin Lord. I used to kind of dread this event because I often lost characters on this, but ever since they added the chests into the game, it feels like it's a great opportunity to get some awesome loot. Most of the time I don't really get anything, but it feels good to have the anticipation there, like what are the chests going to have this time around? Doesn't look like there's any on this floor. And sometimes you have to do this because the game client won't always stop when you find a treasure chest, and it's possible to bypass one completely on auto-explore. Well, that's disappointing. There wasn't one chest in the whole damn place. Usually I get at least one. Now this is normally pretty hard as an Arcane Blade, but thankfully I'm a ghoul. And that makes this fight kind of embarrassingly easy. That Wretch AoE is just obscenely powerful up until you get to Dreadfell. Oh. Ran into an anti-magic. Now, this is where it can get hard to play a ghoul, because your speed penalty really hurts when you're fighting adventurers. When you fight adventurers, do your best to keep them in your Wretch. Because the more time they have to escape it, the more time they have to kill you while you're moving slowly across the map. Thankfully, it was just 2. Yay, another alchemist escort. Maybe we can actually save this one this time. can probably... No, I'm not going to be able to keep him alive. Oh my god. I need to get better at doing this. This is one of the things you really just have to get used to when you play an alchemist is, or not an alchemist, a ghoul. You will lose a lot of escorts. It's really hard to keep them alive with a 20% speed boost. They get ahead of you really easily. If I was paying a little bit better attention, I wouldn't be having so many problems. But I'm kind of running on autopilot just a little bit. Okay, this could actually potentially be really dangerous. I'm going to clear the area first. You can usually handle these at this juncture in the game, but oh boy, a Mind Slayer or a Solipsist right off the bat. Hate those. Okay, we have a Mind Slayer Fire Imp. And he was cake. That's good. Just hold on to that in case we find the other piece of the set. And there's nothing else of note on this level. Doesn't look like they dropped anything really useful to us. I can't believe I'm still using those robes. I need to find some better armor. Get our armor training up to 4 so we can start using heavy armor. Oh boy, they're solipsist. Sure have a lot of rare enemies on that map. Interesting how useful some items can be. The telekinetic core is amazing. A little too amazing right now because it gives you a lot of extra attacks, and I kind of feel like cheating for using it, so I'm going to shuck it off the first opportunity I get. But under normal circumstances, when it's not kind of bugged, it's supposed to bring everything in range and then attack it once. I think right now it attacks it for everything you pull into range, which can be a little broken if you have a bunch of enemies nearby. But it's nice because it's like a AoE group pull. And in the case that you get like a summon or rare that's constantly trying to run away from you and pop more summons, it can be a nice way to wrangle it in and kill its weaker summons. Once they fix it, it'll really only be damaging for willpower-based characters like Cursed, which is who it's intended for anyway, so it's not like that's something to complain about. Okay, we gotta notice that there's a thunderstorm here, which means that periodically lightning elementals are gonna spawn, which is really gonna suck considering this is the boss map, but at least we didn't have an escort pop, like which usually happens when I'm in Old Forest and this event pops. I'll get an escort up, and then I'll be one panel away from the exit, and then all of a sudden a fire elemental will spawn and just shit all over me. Good to see the tree was still a joke. Alright, now we're going to start raising cunning now that we got magic up to 40 base. And I think I'm going to raise these two abilities. I normally don't. I normally get this maxed out first, and then this, and then this, and then this, but because I'm playing a ghoul, I don't have the mobility that I would have for a normal melee character, so I want to have ranged attacks. I want to be able to safely take out an enemy at a range, so we're going to level up all of these 4 fire abilities until they're relatively maxed. The last one we get here is a AoE dot, and I don't think I'm going to get that one, or if I do, I'm going to get it pretty late, because I already have a ground AoE that isn't going to hurt me, and I think I'd rather have these two up first. I hate these lightning elementals. It's like a little barrow white vault. One of the newer vaults that was added in with 43. I enjoy vaults, probably a little too much, which is why I ended up losing so many characters in Dreadfell. Alright, I'm not going to do Lake of Nur yet, because Lake of Nur is significantly more unforgiving on a character that uses magic as their primary, since the boss can knock off all of our sustains over and over and over again, thus rendering us useless. I will save that until I have a lot more offensive ability and do it probably past level 20. Which means instead we're going to rush straight to the maze. Now, the maze is nice for characters like Arcane Blades, Temporal Wardens, Rogues, and such, because you get a lot of daggers and a lot of light armor in there, and these characters tend to thrive in that kind of equipment. Arcane Blades will want to use heavy armor later on, but early on, they don't gain too much protection out of it because they don't really have the generic points early for armor mastery, and the fatigue is pretty punishing before you get your mana regen maxed out. Right now, I kind of wish that I invested those points a little sooner, and that's the disadvantage about playing ghouls or skeletons, is that you have to invest so many generic points in their generic talents. I probably could have gotten away with fewer points in the main ghoul talent, the one that gives strength and con, but I really like to lean on that crutch just a little too much. Especially on a race that has, or not a race, but a class that has so many individual requirements for important stats like an Arcane Blade does. Like, conceivably, an Arcane Blade can put points into every stat during the course of their character's life. They'll want points in Dexterity for the dagger offhands, they'll want points in Cunning for crit and Spell Power, they'll want points in Magic for Spell Power and class prerequisites. We got a dagger, nice. What did we get? Umbral Razor. Ooh, and it scales with Magic. That makes that nice, because we got more Magic and we got Strength. Can we use it yet? My Dexterity is not nearly high enough. It also converts to Darkness and increases our Magic stat. We're going to hold on to that. And we're going to use that once we can equip it, which isn't right now, and wow, it won't be for quite a while. I need to find some items that boost our Dexterity. so I can get offhands on more easily. It also might be worth getting dex up to 20 just to make it a little easier to do that. Plus, it never hurts to have a little more accuracy. Blackened leather. Oh, I got a rogue's plate. Guess I'm going to be using this for a little, or light armor for a little bit longer. Rogue's plate is pretty much the best light armor you can get at this point of the game. It'll completely max out my stun immunity, or just about completely, and it also boosts the hell out of my physical resistance, or physical saves. Usually I don't find it this early. Usually I end up finding like Skin of Many or something else, which are good armors, but Rogue's plate can last a long time. I will replace it with heavy or plate armor eventually, but it does take a little bit of the urgency of that off. Sometimes chests just have gold in them, and that makes me sad. That was a boring floor. Wow. That'd be a pretty nice staff if I was using staves. Ah, I will take that. Teleportation room. Don't mind if I do. Get rid of that awful phase door. Yeah, a word of advice, when you're playing an undead character, get rid of phase door as quickly as humanly possible. It really is terrible. Hooray! Steel Helm of Garcool. As much as I like that Helm of the Dwarven Emperors, I like this one a lot better. My favorite helm. The strength and constitution are good for any melee character. The willpower is good for caster characters like mine because it ups my mana. And the physical, mental, and spell saves are great, as usual. As well as the 10% physical damage increase. Just really good overall. Up. Spellblaze Shard, another nice dagger. This one we also can't use, but it also increases magic. Didn't get crap from the chests. Put a point into Displacement Shield. It's nice to have this ability, and we're going to want to max it eventually. I believe it works with shielding in the Aegis tree, which means it would increase the duration, increase the effectiveness of the actual shield effect, which is really nice. Shields is what's going to keep us alive past about level 25 or so. So it's important that we start maxing abilities that pertain to the shields as quickly as possible. And now we kind of have the freedom to a point. I still want to get my armor up a little more, but with the Rogue Plate it's not quite as urgent, since Rogue Plate's got such good stats on it, we can get away with using it for a while. Alright, we're doing pretty good. I could use some better weapons. These are going to be good for a little bit longer, but hopefully we won't still be using them in Dreadfell. And I really need new rings, but seem to be having really poor luck with those. We will pick up in the next video. We'll do Sandworm and probably Daikara and pretty much every other bonus dungeon. I'm going to do Elven this time before Dreadfell. Not make that mistake again, and if I have to, maybe a Far Portal or two. But this character's shaping up well, better than I was really expecting to, so maybe we can get back to where we were in the original Beginners Series videos, and maybe we can get past that. I would love to have an Arcane Blade winner, so tune back in for the next video.